If I was going to give someone a fishing tip, probably the most important tip I could give anybody is if they're going to go fishing and they want to catch fish, is the first thing they got to have is a lot of patience, and they got to have a lot of confidence. You know, and every cast you make, you've got to be thinking in your mind, I'm going to get bit, I'm going to catch one. And sooner or later, you're going to catch one. But if you go out there with a negative attitude and you don't have a lot of patience and you fish too quick and you pick up and go all with the constantly, you're just running from here and running from there instead of fishing. You know, you're going to catch a lot more fish if you'll spend a lot more time fishing instead of behind the console. You know, they say, deep diving crankbaits is my worst trait. You know, I just can't catch fish on them. And you know, one of the main problems about that is deep diving crankbait fishing is work. I mean, it really takes a lot out of you, and you've got to have patience. And people just, they'll pick a deep diving crankbait up and throw it for about 15 or 20 minutes, and they're tired and they don't want to, you know, and if they don't get a bite, they don't want to keep doing it. They'd rather pick their plastic worm back up and go back to beating on the bank. So that, you know, that's probably most of the people that come, the deep diving crankbaits is the main thing they want to do. They want to catch fish on deep diving crankbaits. And that, you know, a crankbait a lot of times is just you know, anybody that can cast a rod and reel can catch a fish on it because it's got 2 treble hooks on it, and if you throw it in the right place, you know, they bite it. But there's a lot of times when you got to finesse a crankbait, just like a jig or a plastic worm or anything else, you've got to get it down in the cover and work it through the cover and figure out the way that bait's got to, you know, the action the fish want on the bait. A lot of times you can't just reel it constantly. You know, you have to do a stop and go. You got to work it through cover. You know, that's the lake that I live on, where I conduct these fishing lessons there's a lot of timber, and crankbaits and timber don't mix usually. I mean, they mix good for fish to catch fish out of, but you hang up a lot, and that's teaching people to be able to walk a crankbait through brush and stuff and not get hung up near as often. You know, you're going to get hung up some, but to not get hung up all the time is one of the key things to learning to fish a crankbait, and even in grass. You know, I mean. You know, you got to figure out a way to get as many casts as possible, or to complete a cast without fouling your bait up with grass and stuff. You know, so there's a lot of ways to do that, and it takes patience. When they come to take my class, the first thing they do is when that bait starts running into timber, they pull back. You know, and that's a surefire way to hang a crankbait up. You know, that bill is designed, that bait is diving like this, and that bill is the first thing that hits that piece of cover. So if you'll have your rod pointed at your bait most of the time, when you're reeling that bait and that lip starts getting on that limb, if you'll just kind of start walking it over that limb, well, that's normally when the strike's going to happen, is when that thing swims away from that limb and it kind of darts away from it. You know, that's when the fish usually comes out there and hits it. But if you throw out there and you're walking it and you're cranking that bait back, and just as you start to feel that limb, if you pull like that or set the hook in any way, you know, you're going to just hop the bill right over that limb, and the first thing that's going to happen is that hook's going to get hung up in the limb. You know, so you got to have some feel crankbait fishing just like you do jig fishing or worm fishing or anything else. You know, I mean, you've got to know what that bait's doing down there and when it's hitting the right stuff. When I set that record on Falcon, there was some rock, a little bit of jagged rock sticking off the edge of a point, and I had to hit that rock constantly. I had to make the right cast to make that bait get down there and hit a jagged point of rock in 17 feet of water. You know, but I could tell when that bill started getting down there and starting to come over that rock, you know, I had to have the right retrieve and be paying attention, and all of a sudden that bait would just load up with a big fish. You know, if I ripped it through there, they wouldn't bite it.